when in Hilchot Avelut, when the Rambam's talking about when you need to rip your garments, and he's talking about how we learn out the obligation to rip your garments for Av Beth Din and a Nasi.
Okay.
This is in the 9th parak.
Okay, I'm looking if I have a hard copy next to me. So let's put it on the screen. I don't have my hard copy with me, so I'm going to put it on the screen. Is everybody, when the Nasi dies, whatever the Nasi is, by the way, what does the Nasi mean when the Rambam says it? When the Mishnah says the Nasi, who are they referring to?
The person in charge of the Sanhedrin?
Yeah, usually the head of the Sanhedrin. But it could very well be also whoever's the undisputed leader of Klal Yisrael at the time, and there's no one above him. So maybe even today, a prime minister or a president would have that then. Okay, you're saying Avil. Yeah. I don't know.
So the obligation.
It was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi himself they're referring to and his successors. So you're saying the 9th parak.
Yeah, so in the 9th parak, the obligation is learned from you rip your clothes over the death of a Nasi. That's learned out from what David does when Shaul dies.
Yes.
And the obligation to rip your garments when an Av Beth Din dies, that's when Yonatan dies.
Okay. The Rambam doesn't mention that explicitly, but that seems to be his source.
No, he mentions it explicitly. He quotes
it. Hold on a second. Talking about the end of the 9th parak?
Let me find it.
Oh, yeah, no, you're talking about in the middle of the 9th parak. At the end of the 9th parak. Menai Shekron al Nasi is at the beginning of the parak. Based in, okay, yeah. Al Shaul Val Yonasan Beno. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
So, yeah. So Jacob pointed this out.
Yeah.
Shouldn't
well, I didn't show this on the screen. Hold on a second. Yeah, go on.
From where is Yonatan the Av Beth Din? Wasn't Doeg the Av Beth Din at that point?
Yeah, so maybe Doeg was already dead by then.
Okay. Interesting.
I always say Avner was also like a head of Sanhedrin, right? Isn't there
right? So all those things.
Yeah, it seemed to be self-contradictory. In this case, when Shaul went to war, what does it say? The first time went to Shaul he went to war with Jonathan. What does it say there? It says they need to figure out who was the one who was guilty of all this, right? So it says they drew lots, Joshua style. So Shaul said, "I'm going to put me and my son on one side, and the rest of you on the other side." Right? What was that? What was the implication there? Why do you say me and my son? Like, why do you say? How do you know that it's either one of us or one of yous? Someone ate and caused God's anger against us. When they went to battle, Jonathan was considered almost on par with Shaul. They're the leadership. Mishnaic times, Nasi not based in. What they call them for the first few centuries. Sorry about the background noise. Eh? Leon, you there? No. Okay, I was gonna imply that they say the Nasi and Av based in together make a zug, a pair. Remember the zugos? They're the highest ones. Nasi Av based in it goes until Shammai and Hillel, and Shammai and Avtalio and the rest of them. So they basically Shaul and Jonathan are implied there that they're a zug. They're the two who are in leadership position. Everybody else is not mentioned. So that's what it was when they went to war. So that's the implication. He's the Av Based in, the number 2. Not necessarily that when they sat in Sanhedrin, 71 judges, that Jonathan was the one who sat in front, but it means that he was the number 2 in this case. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So compare that with what we have there in that. I think it's like the 13th parak of 1 Samuel, where it puts them together. Yeah. Every time it says a person was a head of Sanhedrin, also, who else is considered head of Sanhedrin who appears in Sefer Shmuel? We also have David HaMelech and but certainly what's the Achitzophel and even are considered the Rashi Sanhedrin. What does that mean in context? It means that at some time or another, each of these men exerted an authority that was second only to the king. That's what they're trying to say. Basically, I don't believe that for a part of Jewish history. I just saw that I think Steinzal says this. Who's the one who said this? That this whole idea of the king and next in line to the king started right before Maccabean times, when they started having corrupt Kohen Gedolim. For large part of Second Temple times, basically Shimon HaTzadik is the one who started this. Basically, the entire Greek era, starting with the Greek conquest of Eretz Yisrael and the subsequent kingdoms, the so-called Greek kingdoms, the Greco kingdoms, the Assyrians and the Ptolemaic Egyptians who ruled Eretz Yisrael. The Kohen Gadol was the de facto ruler of the Jewish people. He was a vassal of the Greeks, but he was their ruler. So he was the Kohen Gadol and he was the Nasi. And then you had the era when Jason and Menelaus and other unsavory characters basically bribed their way into the Kuna Gadola. So the sages themselves realized, the good from Jews didn't subscribe to the Kohen Gadol's leadership. They did not recognize him as the leader of the Jews. Instead, the leader of the Sanhedrin, the number one leader of the Sanhedrin, and his number two, the Zugos, the Nasi and the Av Beis Din, basically took on that name, Nasi. It used to be that the person who's at the head of the Sanhedrin wasn't specifically called Nasi ever, but they started calling him Nasi in order to show that he was the recognized and legitimate leader of the Jewish people. So Nasi, at the time of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and already from Hillel's time, and even before Hillel, Nasi meant the person at the end of at the head of Sanhedrin, because the political leader is illegitimate, whether he's the Kohen Gadol or one of the off the derech Maccabean rulers or the Herodian ruler, right? Herod, they don't consider him a Nasi. He was the king, and even Agrippus, one of his good descendants, wasn't considered a Nasi of the Sanhedrin in this respect. Nasi means a legitimate ruler, and for a few centuries it meant the one who's at the head of the Sanhedrin, and the Av Beis Din is the number two. So not that Shaul and Yonasan were literally the head of the Sanhedrin, number two guy in the Sanhedrin. It's that they were number one in Am Yisrael and number two in Am Yisrael, just like the Sanhedrin of the negative first century and the next 4 centuries was the number one in Klal Yisrael and the number two in Klal Yisrael. So that's another pshat.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.